Okay, so the truth is, yes, babies are born ready to communicate, and this is something that we need to be letting parents know about. We need to be letting them know that right from the word go, or even before, they're all ready to go in terms of communication, so it's really important to start that right from the beginning. New babies can recognise their parents' voice. They don't need to wait until 3 months before they can copy facial movements. In fact, there's been lots of research, I don't know if people are aware of the social baby movement, where they've been looking at newborn babies being able to stick their tongue out in response to an adult doing that with them. And I think that's great that, you know, if we can let parents know about that, then there's more incentive for them to do those funny faces and to chat with their children. Okay, so the very first sounds don't vary according to the language of their parents. Babies are born with the capacity to produce any sounds, and as they move through and start to hear different sounds of different languages, then they adapt their sounds to their parents' language. And before they're 1 year old, babies are able to use gestures and actions to communicate. And it's around a year that they start to come out with their first words. So again, these are all things that obviously you know. And what we want to be doing is making sure that the people who are bringing the babies into the world, who are there for them for 24 hours a day for the beginning, and then gradually as they move into other environments, still have a massive input. We need to make sure that those people know how to support their children's communication development. And this is why it's really important. These are some very useful statistics, which I think some of them are quite surprising and shocking, I think. But by 22 months, a child's development can predict their outcomes at the age of 26. So before they're 2 years old, what they're doing actually is a predictor of what they're going to be able to do when they're 26. That's from the Millennium Cohort Study. That's quite amazing, I think. I'm sure that by 2 years, 75% of a child's brain growth has already happened, with what goes on around them physically affecting their brain structure. And by 4 years, this is some research by Hart and Risley, some children have heard in their environment 19 million more words than others. So the gap between children who are in a more disadvantaged, less communicative environment is 19 million words fewer than children who are in a more communicative, more aware environment. And again, by 5 years, it's been identified by Feinstein and Duckworth that a child's vocabulary will predict their educational outcomes, educational success and outcomes by the age of 30. So it's really, really, really important that we work with these children right from the very beginning. If what we're saying is that by 2, their overall development affects their outcomes at 26, and by 5, their vocabulary affects their outcomes by 30, we need to get in there right at the beginning, and we need to make sure that parents are supporting children as well as they can in terms of their communication development. But in terms of parents, Meluish in 2007 identified that parents have more impact on child's outcomes than any other factor, including the choice of primary school. We think about how much people focus on, which school their child goes to. Well, actually, the parents themselves have much more impact on their child's outcomes than the child's primary school. Often the parents are the first to identify any difficulties, and they'll certainly be the people who will either enable or not enable the access to support that children might need. So even if they're not the people to recognise the difficulties first of all, they will be the people who make a decision about whether or not they can take their child to access the individual support that they might need. We all know, I'm sure, that attachment is the basis for communication development. There was a report last week saying that more than 4 in 10 children have a struggle with attachment early on, the Baby Bonds report. And if they're struggling with that, then they're also going to struggle with their communication development. The amount and the type of language used at home affects the overall language development, so that relates to the statistic I gave before about the number of words that are heard in a family home of different families. And this is a reasonably new piece of research. This is from Oxford School Improvement in 2012. What they're saying is if parents engage with their child's education, and that means education in the widest sense, not just their school or their homework or whatever, but the widest sense of education, then that child's attainment will increase by 15%, regardless of the child's social family background. So I think I've been working a lot in terms of resources for parents, and one of the things that I've found is that parents often don't know necessarily what to expect, but they don't know because they're not told, and they actually get quite upset often if they're not, they don't know how to do the best because they're not told about how to do the best. And this is something that obviously the work that we're doing is trying to facilitate so that parents do get those messages.